In today's video, I want to do a deep dive into the history of a specific group of yokai, the Oni. Oni are one of the most famous kinds of yokai and often shown with red or blue skin, horns, and a gigantic club. They usually lack intelligence and are violent to their core. Their origin is deeply connected with the Buddhist concept of hell and the afterlife, which got adapted over the millennia into the idea of Oni as we know it today. In Japan, every child knows Oni because of two things. The Japanese end of winter festival called Setsubun, where one is supposed to banish the evil yokai by throwing beans at them, and secondly the popular tale of the hero Momotaro, a name given because he was not born naturally, but came out of a peach which a couple found in a river. To briefly summarize Momotaro's tale, here's what happened. He befriended a pheasant, a monkey and a dog, who helped him in his adulthood when he decided to take on the Oni terrorizing the area he lived in. To do so, he confronted the Oni and their evil king on an island called Onigashima. The tale is taught to children from an early age because Momotaro embodies a virtuous and brave role model. In Western countries, Oni might be better known from anime, like Demon Slayer and the 12 Demon Moons, or One Piece with former Emperor of the Sea Kaido. Kaido is actually a stellar example of Oni representation. So let's have a look at some of his signature items and features. He carries a gigantic club. He thoroughly enjoys his sake, which he drinks straight from his gourd. He has long wild hair. Is the leader of a band of grunts and pirates who terrorize the local folks. And coincidentally, his base is located on an island called Onigashima. On top of all of that, one of his signature moves is related to the element of thunder, a common connection to which we will get at a later point again. Also, Kaido is not supposed to just resemble any Oni, but arguably the most famous one and protagonist of this video, the Oni menace Shuten Dōji. In general, Shuten Dōji's story at its core is quickly told and rather simple, yet incredibly important and, as we will see, of great historical significance. If you look into the subject, you will quickly come to understand that there are a huge amount of versions of this legend. While essentially the same, they differ in a few aspects, most prominently the location. While the Oeyama version, which is dated as the oldest existing one, takes place at Mount Oe, in the northern Kyoto region, the Ibukiyama version takes place at Mount Ibuki, close to the northern part of Lake Biwa in modern-day Shiga Prefecture. So for now, let's have a look at what the stories have in common and why these similarities in the stories are so important. The Oni king, like many others, was not born an Oni. He was an outcast, displaced, unwanted, and unaccepted in the imperial society of the capital. He was blessed, if you will, with an infamous appreciation for alcohol and human flesh, just as well as superhuman strength. But let's take a step back and have a look at his birth. His birth itself is accompanied by many bad omen, which differ just in their form depending on the story, but not in their gravity. It is safe to say that he was in no way born under natural circumstances. As a child, he supposedly lived in a monastery from which he ultimately was expelled because he preferred to brawl and drink rather than follow the monks' teachings. This is just one version of his origins, but in its core, again, similar in its narrative to all the other variations. After that happened, he over time assembled a group of rogues and bandits around him. His and their resentment combined with a grudge they held towards humans turned them into Oni over time. They started to kidnap princesses, maidens and virgins from the capital and ravaged through the countryside. Eventually, the hero protagonist of the Shuten Dōji legend, Minamoto no Yorimitsu, comes into play and is ordered by the emperor to get rid of the Oni king. As in this tale there seems to be a clear division between good and evil, the gods support Minamoto no Yorimitsu, also known as Raiko, by giving him a poison strong enough to disable Shuten Dōji despite his supernatural strength and tolerance for alcohol. Raiko and 4 of his so-called heavenly guardians march towards the residence far away from the capital and disguise themselves as Yamabushi, a kind of mountain priests which usually are out of touch with the high society of the big cities, thus being far less suspicious and welcomed to the hideout. After they successfully infiltrate the Oni's lair, they are invited to stay for the night and celebrate a barbaric feast. That includes human flesh and sake brewed from human blood. The night ends with Shuten Dōji falling into a deep slumber after he has consumed the poisonous sake offered by our tale's heroes. Deep asleep in his chamber, he is beheaded by Raiko. But the dreaded king fights back one last time, with a severed head flying through the air, trying to bite through Raiko's helmet. With his quick wit, he swiftly puts the helmet of one of his companions as a reinforcement, and the last murderous attempt to take the hero's life fails. The Oni's head is then transported back to Kyoto, to be exact, to a temple complex in the southern Kyoto area called Byodo-in, where it is said to be to lay to rest and keep it from causing any harm in the future. The legendary sword that was used to cut the head off the Oni's shoulders was thus named Dojigiri, and is considered a Japanese national treasure and the most important of the so-called 5 swords under heaven. It is currently showcased in the Tokyo National Museum and was in possession of the unifiers of Japan, Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and ultimately Tokugawa Ieyasu. Whenever historians of any discipline are confronted with mythology and folklore, the leading questions remain the same. If you take away the supernatural, what remains? Why did the narrative develop the way it did? And what does the supernatural represent? So let's take a closer look at what Oni actually represent. The concept of Oni, even though ancient, is very simple. The Oni represent phenomena and people the general society are afraid of. In this particular case, that led to a few developments which I would like to highlight. First, the natural forces. Japan is known for its harsh climate with heavy rainfalls which bring storm and thunder with them. Besides thunder and lightning, the people were also scared of the earthquakes which brought great destruction to Japan. Now, the Oni are kind of personification of these fears. They were so scared of these personified entities that some Oni started to be worshipped to gain their benevolence, and thus made the transformation to a god, also known as Kami. The second part of the truth is that Oni was also a term for all the people who did not fit into the mainstream society of the imperial worldview. That included exiled criminals, people who simply lived far away from the bigger cities and thus had different customs than most folks were used to, and also babies that were born with teeth, which are said to have been cast out as these Oni children are omen of bad fortune. So, the Oni represent a multitude of fears at the same time. The aforementioned attributes can accumulate at the same time, or just one trait can be enough to create the narrative about something being Oni. As the idea grew over the course of history, the supernatural skill sets of the figure of Oni grew just as much. They are said to devour humans in their entirety at once, transform into anything and anyone as they wish, and are gigantic in size and strength. At this point, you might already have an idea of what I'm about to tell you regarding Shuten Dōji. All these attributes describe him quite accurately. He was outcast, different, and did not fit anywhere. Theories exist where Shuten Dōji is simply a mythological character based on an infamous leader of rogues who terrorized the emperor's reign and was ultimately slain by his order. In the scientific discourse, it's rather clear that he is a symbol for the others. Others, in this particular case, describes the kind of people who are incapable or unwilling to conform to the norms, practices, and/or beliefs that were seen in mainly the capital and few other bigger cities. There are also theories where the story of Shuten Dōji is seen as a clever and extremely subtle dig hidden in the shape of entertaining art and the governmental way of reigning the country by trying to create some sort of empathy for Shuten Dōji, who invites strangers into his home, tells them about his biography, is being lied to in the end, poisoned, and ultimately killed. Obviously, this is all theoretical and it is hard to be proven, but in my opinion, there is some truth to it. If you would like to learn in more detail about this topic, I will leave a link in the description with some of the literature I read to research about this topic. So, as we have seen, Shuten Dōji and Oni in general are famously known in Japan, and a few years ago found their way into the game Nioh 2 as one of the stronger enemies. Let's have a look now at how this character is being portrayed in the game and which characteristics Koei Tecmo, the developing studio, decided to concentrate on to make Shuten Dōji a memorable one. I hope you learned something today, and please enjoy.
こうあったね。その程度か。少しは楽しめたか。こうあったね。その程度か。